Okay, we're going to start this over again. On the back side of our comprehension page, number 6, we're looking for 3 ways Eva McDonald Valesh advocated for workers in the Twin Cities. So we have our first one talking about
Telling workers' stories.
Article.
Eva McDonald Valesh. Eva McDonald became well known as a 22-year-old writer in 1888. That year, a series of her articles were published in the St. Paul Daily Globe newspaper. She wrote about the long hours, unhealthy working conditions, and low wages faced by women at a local clothing factory. The women went on strike just weeks later, and McDonald's articles were seen as the spark that ignited the protest.
So she wrote the article, she was sparking the protest. So now, let's listen for another way.
McDonald went undercover in order to get detailed information about the working conditions in Twin Cities area businesses. She got jobs as a factory worker, a domestic servant, and a store clerk. Writing under the name Eva Gay allowed McDonald to keep her real identity a secret.
So going undercover, that would be the third way. Number 7. How did the population of northern Minnesota change from the 1880s to the early 1900s? So we talked about Bohemian Flats in the cities and how that urban cities changed with all the immigrants coming in with all the factory jobs. Now let's see what happened in the northern part of Minnesota. So from Finland to the Iron Range. So moving up to that Iron Range, northern Minnesota.
From Finland to the Iron Range. The discovery of iron ore in northern Minnesota sparked a rush of people to the region. Before the discovery in the 1880s, very few European Americans lived in the area north of Duluth. By 1900, more than 25,000 people lived there. Most of them were immigrants who had come to Minnesota to work in the iron mines. The Oliver Mining Company employed workers from a long list of foreign countries, including Finland, Croatia, Slovenia, Italy, Slovakia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, and Poland. In 1907, only about 300 of the company's 10,000 employees could speak English fluently.
So we know why it's changing. All these immigrants are going there for the mining jobs, but how did it change? So in the early 1880s, there were just a few European Americans living up there, small number. Then it grew. By 1900, there was more than 25,000. And then I thought there was another number in here. I would say going from very few to 25,000. That's how it changed. How it changed was it kind of exploded in the numbers there. So give me the numbers. So our next question is write 3 or more words that describe the working conditions Anton and Tilla faced in the iron mines. So we learned last week what it was like in the wool factory. It's kind of hot and miserable. Let's listen for those describing words on what Anton and Tilla faced in the iron mines.
Of all the foreign-born immigrant groups that worked in Minnesota's iron mines, the largest was the Finns. Many of Minnesota's Finnish iron miners came from Michigan, where they had done similar work. Others came directly from Finland.
So that's why they're saying from Finland to the Iron Range. And here we hear about
17-year-old Anton Antila was among the Finns who left his home country to live and work on Minnesota's Mesabi Range. He arrived in the tiny mining community of Biwabik in 1906. It took him less than a day to find work in an underground mine nearby. Antila learned immediately how hard the work was. For more than 10 hours a day, he worked deep underground, shoveling iron ore into wheelbarrows and tramcars. Machines then lifted the ore up the mine shaft, a tunnel from the mine to the surface. It was dangerous work. The mine shafts were dark and dusty and could collapse, especially when miners used dynamite to break up the rock. A few months after Antila arrived on the Iron Range, 5 tramcars loaded with ore raced out of control and killed 6 men at a mine near Eveleth.
So more than 10 hours a day. Normal working days in today's world is 8 hours. So he's working long hours. It's tiring work. He's shoveling for over 10 hours. Shoveling, shoveling, shoveling. He's going to get sore arms, sore feet. Right? It's dark. It's dusty. It's dangerous. People have died. Those are all describing words. Were they getting paid well for this work? Oh, I see some people saying yes, and I hear a no. What do you think? Thumbs up, were they getting paid well? Thumbs down, were they not? Mark, why do you have a thumbs down?
Because they didn't say it, like, if they found more, but
Think back to what we know from the last chapter. What did we learn about the iron mines? Christina?
you don't get paid much, like, because it's so easy, like,
Low human capital, low skill. Doesn't take much skill to shovel, right? Even though it is dangerous and it's kind of nasty, it's a low pay. So are these workers going to want to keep getting a low pay for working over 10 hours and it's dangerous? No. So we're going to listen to these work conditions that they had and what the miners get together to do.
Working conditions on the Iron Range. The longer Antila worked in the mines, the more he became convinced that the mining companies were mistreating him and his fellow miners. Workdays were long, up to 14 hours. The miners were paid by the amount of iron ore they produced, instead of by the hour or by the day. To earn more money, they had to bribe their supervisors, called foremen, to let them work in places where the ore was most plentiful and easiest to remove. In the early 1900s, a miner earned about $1.65 per day in wages.
These are bad working conditions. We talked about this a little bit in the last chapter, or last week. I don't remember when it came up. But we talked about that term strike. What does it mean when somebody goes on strike, Nolan?
they're not doing their job.
They're stopping doing their job because they want certain benefits. They want a better pay. They want to get certain things. So they say, well, I'm not going to work until I get that. As a teacher, if I said, well, I'm not coming into work until you increase my pay, they'll say, fine, we'll get a sub. How does it become effective for me as a teacher to go on strike? Adeline?
Then there's still gonna be a teacher there, so then they'll get paid instead of you.
So how do I make it effective? What needs to happen if I really want change to happen?
Convince all the teachers.
I have to convince all the teachers to go on strike. We don't have enough subs if all the teachers went on strike. There's not enough people to come in to replace the teachers. Because you need to have certain skills, you need to have your teaching license, right? So all of us going on strike, there's a better chance that we will get good results. So the miners are saying, we have really bad conditions, it's dangerous, it's dark, it's long hours. They're not giving us the tunnels. We have to bribe them to get tunnels that have the good iron ore in it. If we don't bribe them with money, we get put on a tunnel that doesn't have much, and I'm only getting paid by how much iron ore I can find. It's not fair. So let's see what happens with the miners. They go on strike, and what is going to
Workers strike. By the summer of 1907, Antila and thousands of his co-workers had had enough. They joined a labor union to demand better pay and working conditions. Union members organized a strike where they walked off the job and refused to return until the mine owners agreed to make improvements. It was the first widespread organized labor strike the Iron Range had ever seen.
So, without reading ahead, if you've already read ahead, I don't want to see your thumb. Do you think their strike works or it doesn't work? Got lots of thumbs up. Yeah, going on strike makes sense that it's going to work. If all the teachers go on strike, there's not enough teacher substitutes to fill in. Adeline, you have a thumbs down, why?
Because since you don't need to be experienced, they could get a lot more people.
You don't need to have any skill. To be a teacher sub, you need to have skill. You need to have your sub license. To be a minor, you don't need to have any skill for that. So any immigrant coming in can replace them. Uh-oh.
The owners of the mining companies were determined to keep the mines open and force the labor union to give up its strike. They brought in some temporary replacements, other immigrant workers from southern and eastern European countries, such as Greece, Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, and Montenegro. They hired hundreds of guards to protect the new workers and to intimidate or scare the strikers into ending the strike.
So is it gonna work? No. It only works if you're hurting the company. It would only work for me if all the teachers went out and nobody could replace me. Right? If it was just me going on strike, they can replace me. I don't get any benefit from that. I lose my job. Right? This is what happened with the miners. They have other immigrants coming in who says, yeah, it's a bad job, but it's money. I need to get paid. So they still did it. So for that number 9, why did Antilla and the other miners go on strike? It was the bad working conditions. It was the having to bribe the foreman to get the good tunnels to go to. It was dangerous. They needed more safety precautions. All of those are reasons why they go on strike, but their strike isn't helping.
Antilla and other striking miners used threats and persuasion to try to convince the replacement workers, whom they called scabs, to stop working. Those efforts mostly failed because the replacements needed jobs. They couldn't afford to walk away. Soon, however, the striking miners began returning to work because they needed the pay. The strike was broken, and the temporary workers lost their jobs to the returning miners. The strikers had gained nothing. Mining company owners turned their attention back to other business, but they would face labor concerns again and again in the years to come.
So as the years come up, has anything improved for the workers?
No.
What are the workers going to try to do again?
Strike.
Because they need improvements. So as their unions get stronger, they're able to make more of an impact. So this next section's telling us how, yeah, we still needed to make a change. So we went and we had another strike, and Congress gets involved with labor unions, because labor unions were just getting big then all over the country. And more things got put in place to look out for the workers. One of our Catholic social teachings, the rights of the workers, right? Making sure that they're getting decent pay at safe jobs. So in 1935, Congress passed a law that made it easier for miners and other working people to form those labor unions and negotiate with employers for better conditions and pay. So things kept improving. So that first strike, nothing changed, but over time it did. So it's good that they didn't give up and say, well, horrible job, I guess. No, they kept at it, okay? Once you keep at something and keep working for that change, change will happen. Might not happen right away. Transforming the state. Number 10. How did immigrants transform Minnesota in the late 1800s and early 1900s?
Transforming the state. Anton Antilla and Stefan and Anna Jakub were among the thousands of immigrants who helped turn Minnesota into a modern industrial state during the final years of the 1800s and the early years of the 1900s. Although the mills of Minneapolis and the ore mines of the Iron Range were owned and operated by wealthy industrialists, they depended on working-class men and women like Anton Antilla and the Jakubs to keep them running. These newcomers also contributed to the state's culture. They brought with them customs, traditions, foods, and celebrations unique to their people.
2 different ways immigrants were transforming Minnesota. One way, they were the labor force. The industries got bigger and bigger because of all the immigrants coming in. They could only get bigger because they had workers. Another way, they brought their customs and traditions from their countries, right? Think of all the different beautiful things we have here. In the summertime, I know in Wisconsin, which is very similar to Minnesota, you go to Milwaukee and there's always different festivals every week. There's the German Fest, the Irish Fest, the Italian Fest. We have those too in Minnesota, it's just spread out more, right? I'd say, in the summer, we will have an Irish Fest. There's an Italian Fest in August. In October, we've got Oktoberfest for the Germans, right? Lots of different festivals happen throughout the year here in Minnesota where we can really learn about those different immigrant populations. So they're bringing their culture here. So those are the two different ways that immigrants transformed Minnesota. So let's look back at the yellow box, becoming an American citizen. Number 11, can I take a peek real quick? My question got messed up. Name 3 requirements immigrants need to fulfill to become American citizens. Because you can't just come here and say, oh, I want to be an American now and be able to become a citizen. There's a process you have to go through. So let's learn about that.
So what? Becoming an American citizen. During the immigration boom around the turn of the 20th century, Minnesota saw tremendous population growth. Many of these immigrants, including Knut Weifold, who came from Norway in 1887, became citizens of the United States. They qualified for citizenship by going through a process called naturalization.
So I've told you that Matteo, my father-in-law, came from Italy. He went through this naturalization process after Mr. Gambino and I got married. So it wasn't that long ago. He went through this process himself. So let's see what kind of things immigrants have to do to become a United States citizen.
Immigrants today still follow the same steps. To qualify for citizenship, they must be over 18 and have lived in the United States for at least 5 years.
That's 2.
They must pass a test in the English language and in civics, and they must be of good moral character.
That's 2.
When a parent is naturalized, any children under 18 are automatically granted citizenship.
So you have to be 18. You have to have lived here for at least 5 years. You have to pass the tests in English language and in civics. Civics is the government, how our government works. You'll take a civics class in high school. And you have to be of good moral character. You can't be getting arrested for all the crimes that you're committing. You can't have come from another country where you committed a bunch of crimes. You can't escape here, right? So you have to be a good moral character. You have to be at least 18 years old. You have to have lived here for 5 years.
Good afternoon, students.
And
Start
then
the
pass
Tuesday
the
estimate
test.
announcement. Track and field practice today. Please meet out on the soccer field. Track practice today. Please meet out on the soccer field, not in the gym. We have a couple students who need to pick something up in the office. Graham Sealing, Beckett Seibert, Ellie Broderick, Mallory Henricks, and Amelia Stokes. And finally, we have the winners of our Pop Tab collection. The winner was, drum roll please, Miss Schmitz's first grade class. Congratulations, Miss Schmitz's first grade. You did awesome. You brought in the most top tabs during this lesson
by a
service
lot.
project. So
We
thank
came
you for
in
your
second.
participation. Thank you to all of you
We came
who
in
brought in top tabs. We so appreciate it. We donated them to the Ronald
We
McDonald
had
Foundation. We appreciate it.
30 somehow.
I hope you have a great
They had,
afternoon.
like,
Spend some time outside. It is beautiful, and we will
think,
see you
if I
tomorrow.
remember the
Be
numbers
kind and
right,
gratefully.
we had
Be
like
strong
30
and
some
courageous,
pounds
for
and
the
they
Lord
had
your God
like
is with
50
you
some
wherever you
pounds.
go.
So it was a lot more pounds that it wasn't close.
They bought them.
The third place wasn't close to us. No, they didn't buy them.
They never threw away in there.
They kept
So they were buying them, guys. They were collecting. Okay, focus.
They bought them.
Focus. So, we have covered the whole backside. So the front and backside. When you have those done, we're just turning them into the gray tray. Okay, not at this moment. We're just gonna turn it in when it's finished. If you take it home tonight to finish it at home, it's fine, you'll turn it in tomorrow. So I want to have a little bit of time to talk about the Heritage Project, to give you a visual of something to see. Because sometimes it's hard to think outside of that box when you don't have different ideas. So Fallon worked on hers over the weekend, and I asked if I could just show it to give an idea. So she's doing the poster, and she's talking about her dad's side, okay? She's got pictures to go along with stuff, and she's got, my dad's family moved from County Kerry, Ireland to Chicago. His grandma and grandpa were both born in Ireland, but met in Chicago. Then her dad moved to Minnesota when he married her mom. I don't know. She's got different things on here, like percentages of what their heritage is. Like Mr. Gambino's 100% Italian. Her dad is 65% Irish. Okay, so that makes Fallon half of what her dad is, because she's half her dad and half her mom. So if her dad's 65%, she's about 39%. The Scottish, I'm not quite sure about these percentages. The 20% Scottish, 4%, and then she's a lot more German than her dad is. Why do you think that would be? I don't know.
Her mom's side's German.
Yeah, her mom's side has some German in them, so she's more German than her dad is. And then she's got some stuff about her mom. Okay, so it doesn't have to look like a tree. It can. That's one way you can do it. This is how Fallon decided to do it. And she's going to have stories to share as she presents it. Okay? So she's not just going to stare at here and point at it and read it. She's going to know what's on her poster, be able to say what's on the poster, and she can point to stuff as she's talking to us. And she can also put in other things that aren't on the poster she can talk about. Okay? So this is just one idea. Does it have to look like this? No. Okay, you come up with what works for you. Does that make sense? Tomorrow, we're gonna make sure all the comprehension pages are done and turned in, and we're gonna have some work time. So if you have a poster at home, bring it tomorrow so we can work on it in class. If you have not talked with your families yet about this, to get ideas of what to write about, you have to do that tonight, because we're gonna have work time tomorrow. It's gonna be really hard to work when you've got nothing to work with. If you're gonna do it digitally, okay, we'll have a little bit of time in class to work on that. So make sure you bring stuff to do your work time tomorrow, okay? Everybody understand that? So comprehension pages, we need to be finishing up. Once you're finished, make sure your name is on it, and it gets turned into the gray tray. I'm sorry, what was your question? Well, she just talked about their family. She didn't do an actual family tree. She just kind of explained what it was instead of putting it as a family. You don't have to do the family tree. Okay? So you can look at her poster and get an idea. Oh, I have to turn, hold on, I've got to stop our recording. Hold on one second.